Welcome to Forward Progress on this Monday, October 16th, post week 6. We've got an action-packed show. We'll be breaking down some takeaways of the week that was. All of our teams won, so you think we'd be in a good mood. We'll be taking a look at early market moves and impactful injuries, and then we'll preview Monday Night Football, including Cleve TA's first touchdown scoring prop. If you're not already, you should really subscribe, like the button. It helps boost us in the algorithm and allows us to grow bigger and reach a bigger audience. Of course, none of this will be possible without our sponsor, Pinnacle. Pinnacle is the world's sharpest sports book and available to bettors in Ontario. Find out what the pros have known for the last 25 years. Everyday competitive odds, your trusted sports book. Bet smart, bet Pinnacle. Must be 19 plus in Ontario. Please play responsibly. With that being said, I'm your host, George Sofidis, and I'm excited to get this show on the road. I'm joined, of course, every Monday by Pro Sports Better, creator on the Hammer Betting Network, Suma, and Plus EV Better, CleveAnalytics.com, Cleve TA. Thanks for joining me, gentlemen. We had one hell of a Sunday night football game. The Bills really took it down to the wire. Cleve, I want to start with you and with the grander theme. We often talk about London and the hangover of returning to play without taking a bye. And you talked about how it affects a team's scoring total and team totals. The Bills stupidly compounded this by flying in late. Is that why you think they look so sluggish and sleepwalking, or do you think it was something else?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I think some of that could be the case, but also, they just were decimated with injuries in that game in London against the Jags. So I think the combination of the two might have helped cause some of the sluggishness. But yeah, they just 2 weeks in a row that they've come out completely cold and sleepwalking. And so I don't know. It's really hard to put your finger on exactly what's going on. But, they were so hot going into London and they could not be stopped and blowing everybody out. And now 2 weeks in a row, they look very mortal and very average at best. So I don't, again, this happens from time to time in the NFL. Like you have these lulls. So I would tend to think that they'll bounce back, and especially against this Patriots team that is essentially dead for rights at this point. But, it's something to monitor. Dalton Kincaid didn't play yesterday. Like I said, there's some injuries on the defense. So, it might have been just an attrition thing, but definitely something to monitor. If they have a third straight week where they really struggle, I think that's when we start to get concerned.
All right, Suma, let's not just dump on the Bills. Let's give some credit to the Giants. They have had a makeshift O-line. Josh Izudu, who is not a left tackle, has been playing left tackle. He gets hurt in the first quarter. And then freshly signed off the couch, Justin Pugh slides over to left tackle. How were the Giants able to hang? Do they deserve any credit for last night's performance?
Yes, I think that their defense played very decent. Played kind of decent against the run, at least in the first half. And I think Tyrod Taylor made a few key plays, and for like 2.5 quarters, it looked like Tyrod Taylor would be outplaying Josh Allen in Buffalo before Allen started to do his casual magic. I just think that Giants looked good on defense, made some key stops, and Tyrod Taylor made some plays down the line. And then, I mean, what a disaster at the goal line just right before halftime. Like, how in the world could you call a run there? Like, no timeouts. Like, just call a pass, and if it's incomplete, you got another shot. Like, I think that, or I had the feeling that Dable was very perplexed that they called a run, and he was basically throwing up. And I mean, a tough situation in football, but overall, I think Giants looked very good. I think that this Giants offense looked a little bit more stable with Tyrod Taylor there. I don't know whether that's negative for Daniel Jones or positive for Tyrod Taylor, but at least Tyrod Taylor was a little bit more mobile, avoided sacks, and made some key plays down the field. And just gotta give the Giants credit for that performance. But it was still only a 9-point performance with some bad situational football at the goal line.
Yeah, I noticed, Cleve, that they tightened up their wide receiver rotation. They finally, rather than have 8 guys running in and out of the game, they kind of have figured out a rotation. Saquon Barkley is back. If this O-line gets a little bit healthier, You think the Giants' average can look closer? Offense can look closer to average than as bad as they've been.
Maybe they're still not very good. I mean, they've got like 5 number 3 wide receivers. They've got no real top receiver, and Darren Waller's always banged up. Can't really count on him with his soft tissue injuries. And you're taking me back to that goal line stand for the half. So anyone who followed me on Twitter, I took Isaiah Hodgins 60-1 first TD, and he was the only receiver on the field on that play. So it was clearly going to go to him. My guess is they were going to throw a fade to him. And I got up, I stood up and was ready for it. And then he tapped his helmet. He called an audible to that run. And look, I know people are blaming Dayball for that, but I mean, Tyrod Taylor's been starting in this league for a decade. He's got to know that you can't run the ball there, that even if you have the check.
Good point.
Option, Dayball told him not to do that. And so I don't know what he was thinking. So that really pissed me off. And it was just a terrible play. And then I fell asleep for the second half. So I watched this morning what happened at the end of the game. I would have run the ball with Barkley. I honestly, I think you have a much better probability at the 1 inch yard, 1 yard line of running it in, even if Barkley goes over the top, or even if you pitch it to him, than you do with that throw to Waller. So I would have liked to have seen at least run it in. That's the last play of the game. It's a little bit different than before the half.
Yeah,
but at least it was entertaining. At least we almost had 3 monster favorites go down, which would have been incredible.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was an interesting game.
All right, one of the monster favorites that went down was San Francisco. Let's throw CLV out of the window. A lot of us got in under 6, and even at 6 and 6.5, and the game went all the way up to 10, and I think closed 9.5. All right, Suma, let's start with you and San Francisco. They have a lot of really good players, and 3 of them got hurt. Trent Williams finished the game, but it looked like he might have got a high ankle sprain. CMC leaves the game with an oblique, and Deebo Samuel with a shoulder. How serious a blow are all these guys, and who's the most important? Because if you're missing even multiple of those guys, this offense might not be as good as it's been.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We are probably, so if all those guys miss, we are already moving towards cluster injury territory, because all 3 of them are very important. Like Trent Williams, arguably the best left tackle in the game, also correlated towards Christian McCaffrey's success on the ground. Deebo Samuel, very good weapon. So it will be tough if they lose those. I think Deebo is probably the guy that has the highest chance of missing some time with his shoulder injury. CMC, don't know whether they're going to rest him for a game, but at least it didn't look that bad. And I think Trent Williams came back into the game, but they needed to help him a little bit. I think there were some plays where they had a tight end helping him chip the pass rusher. So probably Deebo, the most likely to miss some time. And it was a weird game. After that first scoring drive, San Francisco was not able to do anything in that game.
Yeah.
And the Browns basically just sit back there, let their D-line eat, and basically were more physical and just hammered those guys. Pass rush got home, run defense played very, very well, and Purdy was just not able to do anything. I think weather was some kind of an issue. There was one play where he had wet hands and almost fumbled the ball. Maybe 2 or 3 balls that were misplaced because of some wind. Yeah. But overall, I just think that was my impression when watching the game, that the Browns, in combination with those Niners injuries, just had their number yesterday.
Cleve, in hindsight, and when we look in hindsight, everything seems a lot more obvious. 10 points in bad weather against an elite defense was a tad disrespectful, no? How good is this Cleveland defense?
Yeah, I mean, it's the best in the league. I think it's bar none best in the league. I think at this point, they've kind of met all the challenges. And, I tweeted about it that of their 5 games so far, they have 4 of the top 18 performances in the NFL in terms of success rate allowed, and they have 3 of the top 5. It's just incredible what they're doing. And it's, Jim Schwartz is a magician, and he's going to get a coaching job. I think I know older DCs are not in vogue anymore, but he's doing such an incredible job with this defense that I think he's going to get some looks, and he deserves it. I mean, some of the stuff he's done has been incredible. they ran man-to-man on like 75% of their defensive snaps yesterday, which was a little bit more than standard. And they were just playing physical up the line, and Brock Purdy just could not get comfortable against that defensive front. And again, like you said, in the wind and against a great defense, that is a lot of points. And I think the one concern, that I had was with PJ Walker is the fact that you could have had multiple turnovers that led to short fields, which you had one, which could have by itself covered the game. But yeah, I mean, in hindsight, Brock Purdy was the first time he was really playing in tough weather, and I tweeted about it yesterday morning, and I probably didn't dig deep enough into it till late, but he has never played in 20-mile-an-hour plus winds, according to my database, and against a short sample size. But I think he had one game where the sustained winds were more like 19 miles per hour, and that was that divisional round game against Dallas last year in the playoffs, where he had, prior to yesterday, it was his worst game of his career. He completed like 55% of his passes and under 200 yards and almost had a couple interceptions. So we should have kind of seen this coming. And this is something I think that we definitely have to pay attention to going forward in the playoffs, whether they play at home in San Francisco where it can get very windy, or if they play in Philly or, somewhere where, the conditions aren't perfect. I think that's absolutely a factor that we have to keep in mind going forward.
All right, Suma, I talked about last week, Brock Purdy has one career fourth quarter comeback. He's basically played in a preferable game script his whole career. Did we learn a little bit about Purdy, or are you going to give him a mulligan with the injuries against a defense that good and bad weather?
To be fair, I don't want to give him a pass for that performance by no means, but I think that most quarterbacks would have struggled in those conditions yesterday, losing your stud left tackle, losing one of your two best wide receivers, losing one of the best running backs in the game, playing in those conditions against, like TA said, probably the best defense in the league. I think that's a situation not many quarterbacks will excel in. But we also, I think, saw some of the limitations that tape guys have been praying for weeks now. So just a game where we might pump the brakes a little bit on Purdy, but next week in a dome, things could look drastically different again.
All right, let's go on to Philly and Jets, the other big upset of the week. The Jets win 20-14. Cleve, I started with Suma in the Cleveland game, even though you're the fan. And I'm going to start with you in this Jets game, even though Suma's the fan. The Eagles had a -4 turnover differential. Is that the only reason they lost?
I'll say I didn't watch as much of this game as I'd like. I think it was 14-3, and I stopped watching. I just figured it would be another blowout. But, Zach Wilson wasn't terrible, I guess, and which is interesting considering being down. I guess his I'm looking at success rate is actually like 38%, so maybe he wasn't that average. But yeah, I'm not even sure how, besides the turnovers, how the Jets kept this game close. It has to be the turnovers, has to be the defense, and the fact that I think DeAndre Swift had 10 yards rushing, something crazy like that. So it's their defense is just always going to keep them in it, which is incredible considering the top three corners are all out. You would have thought that the Eagles would have had advantage, but Jalen Hurts looked pretty spooked, especially in that last interception. He was getting pressure without Lane Johnson. When Lane Johnson left the field, everything kind of turned on its head, and he panicked and he missed easy throws even on that final drive. AJ Brown crossing the middle, he threw it behind him. It was just a weird outing for Hurts, who hasn't looked great all year. So I don't know. Again, it's one of those where you play good defense, your best offensive lineman goes down, and things get a little bit choppy. And anytime you turn the ball over against a team who's a big underdog, you're going to keep them in it.
Yeah, Michael Arakelian from the chat post, Hurts passing outside the pocket has a 20% success rate this year. That's actually very surprising given his traits. Suma, I want to talk a little bit general, broad takeaways. The Jets, we were ready to call their season over, but they're 3-3. They head into a bye, and probably the most promising thing was Aaron Rodgers was throwing on the field without a boot. And I think during this bye week, there will be Jets Nation will be in the churches saying a prayer to Aaron Rodgers' Achilles. What is your level of optimism that the Jets can make a season out of this, maybe sneak in the playoffs, and maybe Aaron Rodgers returns for the miraculous run?
So my optimism that they can do it on their own is pretty low. I think you really need to have a developing bad AFC where you can maybe sneak in with a 9-8 if things go very well, but my optimism is really capped because of that offense. I mean, yesterday, like TA assumed, the Eagles just beat themselves in that game. They were up 14-3, and they had like a missed field goal. They had a fumble after the catch. Devontae Smith had a major drop where he was wide open, dropped the ball. Eagles had to punt. Hurts had that tipped interception where he threw right into Dallas Goedert's hands, and he tipped it towards Quinn Williams. Another interception where I think one Jets pass rusher, I think it was Bryce Huff, touched Jalen Hurts' throwing arm. Ball does a moon ball straight into the hands of an opposing defender. It was really that the Eagles shot themselves in the foot. Also had a missed field goal, and I would not take too much away from the Jets offense here. They had a few big plays, but other than that, they were pretty much contained by the Eagles defense, missing like I think every secondary starter outside of James Bradbury. Also missed Jalen Carter. Brees Hall had a few good runs, but that was pretty much it. So basically a game where the Jets got very fortunate with a 4-0 turnover advantage, got a short field for the late touchdown. And Eagles just couldn't move the ball consistently through the air, despite Jets being without Sauce Gardner, without Reed, without Braden Eccles. And I really thought that the Eagles, and that was also a reason why I had the over in that game. Thank you, great CLV. But I really thought that the Eagles would be able to move the ball more through the air and more efficiently. And that was just not there at some point. They had a great opening drive with that 19-play touchdown drive where Jalen Hurts reached for the goal line, which, in my opinion, didn't really look like a clear touchdown to me, but whatever. And then all of a sudden, yes, the Jets pass rush got stronger. Also, the Eagles lost Lane Johnson, but overall, it was really more Eagles losing this game versus Jets winning this one.
Yeah, I the only thing I didn't hear in your analysis that Robert Saleh has figured out what Mike Tomlin figured out. When your offense is not good, you need to dip into the voodoo to get some W's, and Saleh had all the voodoo working. Let's go to Seattle, Cincinnati. Cincinnati wins 17-13. Cleve, do you think Seattle deserved a better result here?
Well, considering I have +3, yeah. And, no, they were definitely the better team, I think, overall. The first, the Bengals had a nice first half. Burrow looked good on a couple drives, and then they did nothing the rest of the way. Seattle did a nice job of shutting them down in the second half, and Seattle was really good from between the 20s. But once I got in the red zone, it was just a nightmare. They couldn't run the ball. Geno Smith just held on to the ball way too much, and he had a couple of good throws, but there were a couple times where he took really bad sacks. And it wasn't just inside the 10 towards the end of the game. It was just, a couple times inside the 30. And there were guys wide open. So, I mean, I don't really think that Seattle deserves a major downgrade here. It was just one of those where he missed a couple opportunities. But the defense played well. And this is what we talked about last Monday, is that, I wanted to see Witherspoon, with this with Jamal Adams and a healthy defense. And I thought they played well overall. Could have been ugly against that offense, and they played really well. Didn't get as much pressure probably as I would have thought, but still was good enough. Like I said, I think the secondary is pretty solid, and so I think it bodes well here going forward. Like I said, they just missed a couple of throws. They easily could have won this game multiple times, and so yeah, and I thought it was a toss up, and I thought they held their own, and there's not much more to say than. The NFL, like it's a coin flip league sometimes at the end. It all comes down to the red zone. And they just didn't make the plays. But I think all in all, they played a decent game.
All right, Suma, people didn't quite bury Cincinnati, but everybody started picking out the plot that they were going to put their body in. Now they're 3-3. They head into the bye, and Burrow will presumably be healthy after that. Is Cincy a dangerous team moving forward, or is this defense still not good enough?
I'm not sold on them, to be honest. I think that offense really has some way to go. Like, everything is a quick game, and once Seattle was able to take away that quick game after the first 2 drives, I mean, the last 8 drives of Cincinnati, they scored 3 points, and that field goal came on a drive where they had 0 yards. It was after a Seahawks turnover, 3 incompletions, kicked a field goal, and that was pretty much their offensive output after the first 2 scripted drives. Seattle, 4 trips inside the Cincy 18-yard line, got away with 3 points. I really think that, like TS said, that score was misleading. I don't trust that Bengals defense overall. I think they are worse than last year. And the offense, I mean, yes, Burrow looked much healthier, but that offense still doesn't look healthy to me. Like, everything is just quick game. Offensive line is not that stable, and maybe they come out of the bye week with some adjusted scheme, like more under center, play action stuff, like they plan to going into the training camp. But other than that, we really need to wait and see for that offense to make some improvements.
All right, last takeaway game, the early London game. Cleve, this was a weird game. It felt like Baltimore dominated, and yet we had to sweat the cover at the end of the game. What was going on in the red zone for Baltimore?
Oh, you're telling me. I don't know. Honestly, I was having fights with people on Twitter about this. Not fights, but just debates about. I couldn't believe it. They would throw the ball at will between the 20s, and they get in the red zone. And I counted 16 runs out of 19 red zone opportunities. Now, some of those ended up being scrambles. So I don't know what the true drop back number, but even if you gave a couple of those to, those are a couple, they're supposed to be meant for passes, and Lamar took off. That's still, they ran way too much inside the red zone. I really think that had to do with what happened last week with that bad interception, at the goal line. I really think that they're spooked with Lamar. I hate to say it for a guy who's making that much money, but they're kind of spooked with him dropping back and throwing at the goal line. I think that has to be, because there's no other reason why would you run the ball down the throat of a defense where the only thing that defense is good at is stopping the run up the gut. And they just kept doing it over and over. And it was really frustrating because they should have won that game by multiple scores, which we could have said against the Pittsburgh game, right? Like those were drops. So I don't know. There's just something just slightly off with this offense. It's like 1 week it's drops, the other week it's horrible red zone play calling. There's something kind of missing. But I think when they put it all together, they've got the components. I mean, they've got a really deep wide receiver core. We even saw OBJ, look like the old OBJ on that slant. He took it about 40 yards. It's really nice. He looked explosive out of nowhere. And you got Zay Flowers, who's really good in short space. Aguilar and Bateman, Mark Andrews. Like, you actually have real weapons. So I feel good about them overall. It's just they just have to clean up some things, especially in the red zone. And the defense looked great. I thought the defense was really good. They're very aggressive. A couple of defensive PIs and holdings, and obviously that bad Kyle Hamilton roughing, which who knows, he may get suspended here. We saw Kareem Jackson get suspended in the opener or something very similar on a hit. So and that could be a big deal, especially with Marcus Williams dealing with his injury. So that could be a big issue. Kyle Hamilton's been their best defender, so that's something we definitely have to keep an eye on. But I think all in all, Baltimore's a real contender. Just they got to clean up a few things on offense.
Yeah, it felt like they lost a little confidence, even like on some fourth down decision making. He just kept putting out Justin Tucker and said, we'll just take the points, no rolling the dice. Suma, I want to give you a chance to speak on Baltimore when we preview next week's game. But there's a theme on today's show because there's a lot of quarterbacks that got hurt. Tannehill hurt his ankle. Malik Willis comes in, looks lost, hasn't improved. Now, mind you, he didn't get the reps and he didn't expect to go in. If the Titans come out of their bye and Tannehill's not ready to go, what are you downgrading the Titans if Willis has to start?
You have to downgrade them, absolutely. I mean, Malik Willis didn't show, or almost didn't show anything last year. I mean, I gotta give him a pass for joining the game against a very good Ravens defense with the playbook that was orchestrated for Ryan Tannehill. I think with Malik Willis, you gotta put more emphasis on his own legs and stuff like that. But I mean, I think that Ryan Tannehill is a solid quarterback, and Malik Willis, I think, is nowhere near close. So also Titans still have a very bad offensive line, and things might get more complicated once you put a quarterback in there that is not able to get rid of the ball. And Ryan Tannehill is not really good at this to begin with.
Yeah. And receivers, if they don't get Treylon Burks back, they have no receivers that create separation. All right, that's the theme of today's show. What's the backup worth? Let's look at current market review and prices. The Thursday nighter, Jaguars and Saints. There's O-line injuries on both sides. Brandon Scherf and Walker Little for Jacksonville. We're monitoring Ryan Ramczyk and James Hurst for the Saints. It's also a short turnaround, but the big one is Trevor Lawrence, and I guess the market's in a holding pattern until we find out what's going on with him. Cleve, how important is Trevor Lawrence? If he misses the game, Saints are going to go out to the 3 and maybe past it, right?
Yeah, with CJ Beathard, you have to. My guess would be something more like, probably minus like 5, 6 is my guess. It's hard to lay points with this offense with the Saints because they just don't have the ability to extend leads. But the drop off from Lawrence and Beathard has to be close to 5, 6 points. I would guess cut through 3. So I think that's definitely a factor. And then, they're actually missing some guys potentially on defense. Tyson Campbell was their top corner, didn't return. I think he has a groin injury. But he's a guy that's important. Yeah, hamstring. And so he's going to be important. They got Brandon Scherf at guard as an issue. Look, I was on the Colts yesterday, and, I guess it was the wrong read. Gardner Minshew was terrible. I don't think it was really that much that Jacksonville did in that game. I mean, they actually – Trevor Lawrence wasn't very good. Travis Etienne didn't really do much. He had one big run, but it was always 3 turnovers essentially inside Indianapolis territory that really gave the Jags that win. Like I said, I don't think he did anything great. I mean, his 43% success rate Trevor Lawrence did. So it wasn't anything spectacular. It was more of the turnovers. And so, I don't know, short week after that game and coming off of London, it'll be interesting to see kind of how they react. And Zay Jones potentially being out again, they really missed. They have no number 3 wide receiver at all. It's really the top 2 guys, Ridley and Kirk, and nothing else. So they really need him to come back. So there's a lot of question marks I have with the Jags. Their defense is playing excellent. It's causing a lot of turnovers, but that's not necessarily something that's sustainable. So, I think it's going to be a really tight game. I joked earlier, I mean, how many of these Saints, Packers, and Falcons games are going to have spreads between 1 and 2 points? It's like every week, every game is like a 1-point spread either way, and it's got a coin flip. It doesn't matter where they're playing. So this is another one of those. So I think it's actually a pretty interesting game for a Thursday night. It's pretty competitive, and that number would, like I said, would skyrocket if Lawrence is out. It doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. But he's definitely going to be hindered from a mobility standpoint, is my guess. And, he uses his legs to get out of the pocket. So, that's not something you want on a short week.
Suma, like a backup quarterback, but we're also on a short week, so even shorter prep time. Does that compound how big the injury could be to Lawrence if he doesn't go?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you are playing against a very decent veteran Saints defense that likes to play a lot of man coverage and really try to force some coverage sacks and coverage pressures where the D-line that is, I think, not really that great at generating quick pressure, but they really are crazy between their secondary and their front 7 and try to use some stunts and stuff like that and really try to cloud the picture for the quarterback. And yeah, if you put CJ Beathard in there, I mean, it's not going to be a lot easier for the Jags offense. But on the other side, I mean, the Saints, when you look at their schedule so far, like a very close win against the Titans, Panthers, close game against the Packers, got hammered by the Bucks at home, Patriots, and now their defense also did not look that good against the maybe first real quarterback on their schedule. So yeah, we will see what happens with Trevor Lawrence.
All right, let's talk about this Raiders-Bears game. Suma, I'm going to start with
Why?
you. Only because both starting quarterbacks are highly in doubt. First, we get the Jimmy Garoppolo news that it doesn't look like he's going to go this week, and then the books shift the money a little bit. They don't get off the 3, but they shade it towards the dog, and then we get 20 minutes later the news that Justin Fields is doubtful, and they shade it now towards the Raiders, but still on the 3. All right, Suma, what is Jimmy G worth to the Raiders, and how much do they downgrade? And then I'm going to leave Justin Fields' question to Cleve.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Jimmy G is kind of solid. I think that the Raiders' offense in general has some structural issues this year. They cannot really run the ball. They invite a lot of stacked boxes and really have a low success rate running the ball, and that's really integral to that Josh McDaniels offense. Devontae Adams is getting a lot of passes where he basically has to protect himself already against a arriving safety or linebacker. They had, I think, 2 tipped interceptions already on the season, one against Denver in week 1 in the end zone, and then yesterday against the Patriots. So kind of shaky, that offense. Yesterday also the first time that they scored more than 20 points, and that was with the help of a last-minute safety by Mac Jones that cost all of us some money. I mean, really tough offense. I think that when you look at the personnel, I mean, the offensive line is not bad. They got a good running back, Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. Their young tight end is coming along. I think that this offense should be better in terms of efficiency, but they are not, or they don't seem to get everything together. But yeah, I think Hoyer from Jimmy Garoppolo is still a downgrade, but maybe not the biggest downgrade when we consider we are going to play, or they are going to play against the Bears.
All right, Cleve, you get the Justin Fields question. We're about to find out how bad the Bears can be without this guy. How bad is Tyson? Is it Bagent or Bagent? What's the downgrade? What you put a number on it?
I don't know how anybody could put a number on it. I mean, it's hard to value Fields because he's so he can hit those explosive runs, explosive plays, but from a down and down, EPA, success rate, he's not very good. So you can't really downgrade it that substantially. But we also, this Tyson Bagent is an undrafted free agent who was actually really good in preseason. I know a lot of Bears fans were excited about him for whatever that's worth. He was one of the top, I think, 10 graded PFF quarterbacks in preseason, but again, totally unknown. He doesn't have any rushing capability, so it's purely in the pocket. So maybe you get, maybe your passing itself isn't really that much, influence, but it's the kind of the explosive run game that changes things. So I don't know, downgrade them 4 points. I'm just making up numbers. I don't think anybody can give you an accurate depiction. Like, what would this line be if Fields was playing? I guess it would have been Raiders minus, if it was. The problem too is it's Hoyer on the other side, so that's what it's priced. Right now it's priced at 3 with both. Like, if you assume that Jimmy G to Hoyer is worth 2-3 points, this would be maybe Raiders, close to pick them if both are playing. But now that both are not, it's 5 or it's 3. I don't know. This is anyone's guess. I think that the people that are betting this are guessing too, and that's why it's just probably going to be stuck on the key number 3. I can't imagine laying more than a field goal with Hoyer. But I also can't imagine taking this guy, this undrafted free agent with a bad defense at home under 3. So it's probably just going to stay at 3, and it's going to be anyone's guess. So it's a horrible answer because I just have no idea how you value that drop off, because we don't know anything about this guy, and Justin Fields is a tough guy to pin down anyway. So it's one of those things where I will not touch this guy. I don't care what this line is. I'm not going to touch it. Right? It's impossible.
All right, Suma, let's guess some more. Browns and Colts. Let's get out the other injuries out of the way. Joel Bitonio didn't play for Cleveland last week. Braden Smith, Alec Pierce left the game early for the Colts. Deshaun Watson. The spread right now is 1.5-2. depending where you look. What is the line if Watson goes? What is the line if Watson doesn't go? What's your best guess?
I think if Watson goes, this will easily go through the 3, in my opinion. I think right now it's probably a blend of leaning towards PJ Walker because Deshaun Watson, correct me if I'm wrong, TA, but he was DNP all week. And with that rotator cuff contusion in his throwing, when you are 3 times DNP, I'm having a hard time thinking that he's going to be able to play this next week, let alone being healthy enough to be close to 100%. Not a medical expert, but I think if he was anywhere close to returning last week, we wouldn't have seen like a DNP. So I think right now, market is leaning towards PJ Walker starting. And yeah, I mean, can you imagine Gardner Minshew against that Browns defense? So if you put a close to healthy Deshaun Watson there, I think that line should easily be north of that field goal. But right now, we are probably looking at a PJ Walker line.
All right. Cleve, you brought up the question in our group chat earlier because somebody was asking you, what's your best guess for with Watson and without Watson?
Yeah, I thought with Watson it would be cross to the 3, probably 3.5 is my guess. He's still not 100%. So even if he was cleared to play, you got to factor in a little bit. At the same time, I think without him, that's the question is if he's declared out, how far does this drop? Does this drop to Indy -1 or is this Cleveland -1? How much is this factored in already that Watson may play? I mean, I think it's kind of like a 75-25 that he'll play, although I'm not sure that's the case. Maybe like 60-40. Although I'm not sure that's the case. I think it's more of a coin flip. I've heard that, this shoulder injury is more of a 4-week type of time frame. And we are currently in the 4th week. So we're right on the edge. And I guess it all depends on how he feels when he can throw. I think my understanding is he's got pain when he throws and he can throw. It's just he can't push it with a lot of juice on his throw. So do you really want a guy who's 75%, 80%, who can make kind of the intermediate throws but can't go down the field? Or would you rather have a guy like PJ Walker who can kind of, just with that defense kind of keep you around as long as you don't make any major mistakes with your running game and short passing game, kind of make this a 16-13 type game. And then you hope for, the next week in Seattle, that's when maybe Watson can play. I would lean that way. So if you're interested in the Browns, I would probably just wait because I don't think you're going to get Watson, but you never know. Like we're all guessing here. I don't think anybody knows for sure. So I'm just curious to see how far this would drop, with PJ. I mean, it's hard to lay points with PJ Walker on the road against anybody, especially against Indy's call it below league average, but they're not a bad team. So that's going to be interesting. It's kind of how this settles. We might just settle right at pick.
All right, let's look at the game that's been getting the most action this morning and has been lighting up the screen. Lions and Ravens. The big injuries to watch are both running backs for the Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs still hasn't played in a couple of weeks. David Montgomery got a rib injury. Many people don't think he's going to play. And they still had Brian Branch and Jonah Jackson, who were also injured and inactive. For the Ravens, Marcus Williams didn't finish the game, and Kyle Hamilton was ejected for, frankly, that was probably the worst dirty hit I've seen this year. It looked like he launched himself into the gentleman's helmet. All right, early market movement. Like this line starts at 2.5, and Ravens money comes in. We're out to 3, -15, -20. Also the under and the over. The total got bet down to 40, and then it got bet back up to 42. So there's difference in opinion in this market. This is probably going to be a very well bet game. 2 very good teams. But Suma, you brought up the bigger discussion about betting early, and what's your approach to when Monday morning comes and you got a board and you're tempted to get in on lines? Do you like to attack stuff that you see early, or do you wait a little bit?
Sometimes I like to take stuff on Monday where I feel like I can get ahead of the market move, especially when it's about a key number. but usually I like to sit back and watch the screen and watch more information coming in, especially about injuries, because sometimes you feel like you get a lot of FOMO on a Monday, and then you take lines, and then Wednesday, Thursday, you really got fucked with some random injuries popping up and DNPs that you didn't have in your projections. So usually on Monday, I like to sit back and maybe only try to get some numbers where I have a really strong opinion around key numbers. This game, I think in the early weather forecast, there are some winds like 19 miles per hour sustained and 35 plus gusts. So I think that played into some people betting the under. Yeah, a very interesting spot. I think the Ravens offense, we talked about it briefly earlier. I think the Ravens offense, just when you hashtag watch the tape, it's really, really good, but doesn't really show up in stuff like EPA per play because of all the drops early in the season and John Harbaugh like kicking field goals on 4th and inches, 4th and 1, and they trying to run the ball into a stout Titans run defense, even though Lamar is having a field day through the air. I think when you would adjust for like all the crazy drops, and I think he also had a tipped interception at some point, I think that he would show up much higher in terms of efficiency. I think that this offense is very lethal. That defense is absolutely top 5 material. I absolutely love their DC, and this is a tough spot for the Lions, in my opinion. So I absolutely understand why the early Monday money is pushing the Ravens from -2.5 to almost -3.5. I mean, when it touched 3.5, we saw some buyback today. So this might be a game where we are going to see this constant back and forth between 3 and 3.5. But I think in terms of betting the Ravens, when you look at the last 5 games for the Lions, I don't want to take anything away from them, but I think their defense is probably overrated when they play the Panthers, Baker Mayfield, Desmond Ridders of the world. And yeah, this might be a very tough spot for them. Back-to-back road games against Baltimore, against a underrated defense, against a underrated offense, tough defense. So that's probably the driving force behind the early Ravens money.
All right, I'm going to bring it full circle here and bring in PJ Walker. And I want to re-jog your memory, Cleve. Last year, Cleveland played Atlanta, and they opened 6 for Atlanta. And I remember you were on Carolina +6 early in the week. And I didn't arrive to the same conclusion until middle of the week. So I had to settle for 4.5. And that was the game, if you remember, that Carolina fumbled, Atlanta scored. And all of a sudden, your 6 was protected and my 4.5 was losing. But PJ Walker threw the deep ball Hail Mary against Atlanta to at the end of the game. And that's my long-winded way of saying I sometimes also get FOMO, and I try to act early enough if it's around a key number, and I strongly believe it's going to go one way. But sometimes it takes me a while to get to the right conclusion. Cleve, what's your approach Monday morning, and when do you start really formulating your opinion on these games?
Yeah, so if I think there's really we had a group chat about this because it feels like early week CLV just hasn't really mattered when it comes to the final results. It matters when it comes to the final close, but the actual results, it feels like ever since COVID, where that was just wild, some of those CLVs, right? Because you had to kind of guess as to who's going to play, who's not, and then you had midweek like guys pop up, but to me, it's really just around if I think after doing this for so many years, I have a good sense as to where the market will move, especially early. And so if I think that I've got a good matchup, or there's an injury or something like that, and I think that the number is going to move around the key number, I will get in early. I'll get a position early, but otherwise, and that happens maybe I get 2 positions a week on Monday or Tuesday is kind of on average, and especially with totals and when you talk about weather and all those sorts of things, that's where I really think it's important. But otherwise, by the time I get all my data in and then I analyze the matchups and I look at some of the injuries, and again, more than ever, feels like there's a lot more during week injuries during practice. Like we're getting things. I was on Philly Monday last week at -6. I knew this would get to 7. Elijah Vera Tucker was announced out on Monday morning, and I said, all right, this is a horrible matchup. That D line against Zach Wilson and that O line, and then now you don't have Tucker. This is sitting at 6. Like this is going to get to 7, and so I got in. It moved to 7 like within a few hours. I felt, I knew this was going to happen. It actually got to 7.5, I think, for a little bit. And then midweek, we started to see that Darius Slay was on the practice report from an injury, and then all of a sudden, Jalen Carter doesn't practice out of nowhere, and then both of those guys are out by Friday, and I was just like, holy smokes! Like everything that I wanted, I wanted Carter versus that interior of the line, Darius Slay on Wilson. There's just nowhere for Zach Wilson to go, and then all of a sudden those guys are gone, and it's like I wanted it out of my bet. So even though Sauce Gardner was announced out, it wasn't really. I didn't take the bet because I thought Philly had an advantage outside. I thought it was just. I didn't think Zach Wilson could do anything with that offensive line. But then I lost kind of all that advantage with these injuries. Long-winded answers say that there's so many things that continue to occur during the week that getting in early and losing out on that information later in the week just doesn't seem to be as important anymore. It almost feels better just to wait. So whether it's just digging in, finding an advantage, or finding matchups that I like later in the week, or information I like later in the week, or just waiting to see what injuries look like by Friday, it's a slippery slope. So I really only want to get in early if I feel very strongly that a line's going to move, my direction, and I just know it's going to go in that direction. Usually I'm pretty right on that too. So, but it's a tough situation. I'm to the point where I'm not sure I want to take anything on Mondays anymore unless I have like strong information that a guy's going to be out for sure, and I can get ahead of that. So it's tough, but I think the longer we go, I think the more it's better to wait at this point.
All right, we got one more game we're going to preview, and then we're going to look at the Monday Night Football game. But you know what? There's just not enough likes, and if you guys don't get these likes up, I don't think I'm going to let Cleve TA give away his first touchdown scoring prop. We need more likes on the Monday show. It's your favorite show, Monday to Friday on Forward Progress. All right, I've held off long enough, and I just can't. I'm incapable of not talking about the best team in football. The 5-1 Miami Dolphins go to the 5-1 Philadelphia Eagles. And, this is going to be a game where we're probably going to have to find out about the injury report, because the Dolphins lose Xavier Howard and Jerome Baker in game. Connor Williams is going to be very important here because of Jalen Carter, like we discussed. The Eagles also lose Lane Johnson in the game. And Jack Driscoll is a clear downgrade. Darius Slay didn't dress. Sidney Brown didn't dress. Reed Blankenship, Eli Ricks, Bradley Roby didn't finish the game. All right, where do we start? Suma, when you start to think of this game, where do you start? Where does your head start to go? And which of these injuries is the most important to watch for?
My head starts probably with the Eagles' middle of the field defense, and which is the area that the Dolphins love to attack, and where Tua is really good at throwing to. So, at some point against the Jets, only James Bradbury was left from that starting secondary, I think, and these linebackers and safety are really going to face a tough challenge. I'm really interested to see which game plan the Eagles will come up with defensively. But then, yes, this should be a matchup advantage for the Dolphins. But then we go to the line of scrimmage, and you said it, no Terron Armstead. Connor Williams was DNP for 2 straight weeks now with a groin injury. I think he's very important to that unit. They probably didn't need him against the Giants and against the Panthers, but against this Eagles pass rush and run defense with Jalen Carter being potentially back, I think you really want your starting center there, who also, I think, made a step forward this season over the first 3 or 4 weeks. And then it's likely going to be a constant battle between, can the Eagles get quick pressure? Can they somehow contain the run game and force Tua in these longer down situations where they can let the pass rush eat? On the other side, I mean, that Miami defense is not good by any means. Their run defense is not good. They might be without Xavier Howard. Don't know yet about that. Lane Johnson, if he plays, would be a nice addition back to that offensive line. But I think that the Eagles should be able to move the ball on the ground. They also should get something going through the air. And I think for the Eagles, it really might matter stuff like situational play calling, eating the clock at the or during the 2-minute mark, trying to control the game with their run game, kind of like they did against the Bucks, for example, or against the Vikings in the second half. And these are the kind of thoughts that I'm having about this game right now. But yeah, tons of injuries to go through later in the week.
Cleve, what about you? When you start to think of this game, I remember when the Bills were hosting the Dolphins. It's very rare you got the Bills at home under a field goal. You're getting the Eagles under a field goal at home. Are you getting tempted by this number?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like I have a lot of. I was on Buffalo in that game. I have a lot of the same vibes as this game, and we joked around. I just because I was looking at the schedule because I felt like Miami just kept playing patsies. I said, have they beaten the 4 worst teams in the NFL? In the last 5 weeks between New England, Carolina, the Giants, and Denver. And I think that's a reasonable question to ask. Maybe Chicago's at 15, but those are 4 of the worst teams in the NFL, and they've done their job. Like, they covered against all of them. They just destroyed all of them. And kudos to them. They could easily let down in that situation, especially this week when you had the Panthers, and off of that Giants game where they had that big blowout, and they got this big game against Philly coming ahead. They did not look ahead, and they just trounced them. Although they didn't, look first quarter and a half, it was looking a little dicey, but they did do their job, and so you got to give them credit there. But I just think the fact that they played 2 good teams, the Chargers, they needed last second and a comeback to win that one, and had to hold off Herbert in the last drive, and then they got blown out by the Bills. So really, the 2 good teams that they've played have been, either a loss or, a coin flip. So now you go into Philly. I just think that this is a situation where, as much as I love the Miami offense, and that middle of the field is going to be an issue for sure. They've got if Jalen Carter can play, the Eagles have the quick pressure ability without sending extra pressure, and they can put everybody back. And they can defend the middle of the field a little bit better than maybe they would against some other teams, or at least other teams that Miami's faced. But I really do think it's the other side of the ball where Miami just has they're still not good on defense. And the fact that Carolina had it's the first time all year that they had a positive EPA rushing the ball in a game was against Miami. Adam Thielen did whatever he wanted in the first half. I think he had like 80 yards in the first half and a touchdown alone. Miami's dead last in covering kind of under 10 yards, which is exactly what Jalen Hurts and this offense likes to do with the quick screens and the bubble screens and the slants. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. The Lane Johnson injury could have been more of an issue against some other teams, but Miami's not really the team that I'm too afraid of to have a backup there, especially at home. Yeah. So it's not as much of an issue, especially if you can get these quick passes off. So I think that the line of scrimmage is going to be a major problem for Miami. Now, if Darius Slay is out and Carter's out, that's a totally different story. Then I think this deserves to be under 3. But if everybody who's supposed to play does play, then I think that you have to look at the Eagles here. Even George, Miami fan, Miami's number 1 fan, probably agrees that if this is under 3 and those guys are playing, that they're probably it's either Philly or pass, in my opinion.
All right, let's do this, right? Last year, Philadelphia was accused of not playing anybody good, but they blew out everybody they played. The Dolphins have literally thrown pick sixes and stupid interceptions and walk through an entire first quarter and still covered 2 touchdown spreads in back-to-back games. So I'm going to give the chat a chance right here to free roll me, okay? If the Dolphins do not beat the Eagles, we're going to pick one random person who's commented in the chat. I'm going to give them $200 of my own money. You got a free roll. Just drop a comment. If the Dolphins lose to the Eagles, I will give somebody a free $200, except Suma. Suma participates in the chat. I don't know how he manages to do that. Suma's not eligible to win, but if you make a comment in the chat, and the Dolphins lose, someone's going to get a free roll chance at $200. And God help you guys if the Dolphins are 6-1 next Monday. The first half hour of the show is going to be all about the Miami Dolphins. I only joke, but Monday Night Football preview, Cowboys, Chargers. It looks like both teams are healthy. I mean, Leighton Vander Esch got put on the IR, and it looks like Alohi Gilman might be the only guy who misses the game for the Chargers. All right, let's talk about it. Suma, it feels odd to say this, but I want to see how Dallas passing attack looks against the Chargers, and I want to see how the Chargers can run the ball against Dallas. What are you looking for in this game? What do you expect from this matchup?
You already nailed it. These are also the two things that I'm going to watch tomorrow morning. Dallas Cowboys, bottom 3 rushing success rate on defense. I think that with Austin Eckler back, Kellen Moore will. I mean, I think that guy. I think Daniel Popper posted an article today saying if Kellen Moore could, he would like to score 100 points on the Cowboys. So I think that guy hasn't been sleeping this week. I think that the Chargers will have success running the ball, and I think that the Trevon Diggs injury really matters for that Cowboys defense. I think that the Chargers will have success, and then it will come down to whether the Cowboys can somehow fix their offense. I watched every single all 22 snap of the Cowboys offense from last week, and I really gotta say, I'm not a tape expert, but everything looks so static, undynamic, like isolated routes on third downs, triple slants. Every time the Niners were able to figure out whether it's a run or a play action, like when it was a play action, those linebackers did not bite at all. And when it was a run, you sometimes saw Fred Warner, who is pretty good at this, to be honest, but you sometimes saw Warner really making one step towards the run before the ball was snapped. So as if there are certain tells in the Cowboys offense, I think Michael Gallup looks completely washed. He cannot create any separation. CeeDee Lamb is not getting fed for whatever reason. I really have some concerns, and I think if we saw one thing with Brandon Staley over the first 2 years, when he was on the Chargers, he can come up with a good game plan for a specific type of offenses. So really looking forward toward that matchup.
All right, Cleve, I want to ask you 2 questions, and the second one being, who do you like for first touchdown scorer? It's they're coming out of their bye. It's been 6 weeks. Is this the week you think that Quentin Johnson finally gets a bigger role in this offense? And then the next question is, who are you looking at for a first touchdown scorer?
Yeah, with Quentin Johnson, you would hope. I mean, it's a little bit. You feel a little bit worried that he hasn't, broken out yet, especially since Michael Williams got hurt. But he's got to do it at some point. As Suma mentioned, without Diggs, you got Bland and you got Gilmore. That's about it. Jordan Lewis, a corner, they're struggling there. We'll see what happens. I think it's interesting. They said is Kellen Moore going to take the bait? I mean, teams run at Dallas at the 3rd highest rate when you adjust for opponent in the NFL. In neutral game situations. So is he going to take the bait and run, stick to the run with Eckler and Kelly? Or is he going to try to be creative and show McCarthy that he deserved to stick around and, throw the ball down the field? So I think that's going to be interesting to watch. Look, no matter what you think, this is going to be a one possession game because this is the Chargers game on prime time. 17 of the last 22 Chargers games, I think, have been within 1 score. So it's just flip a coin at the end. That's why I have no opinion on side or anything, just because it's just going to come down to the last possession. I think both teams have advantages. The Chargers are bottom 8 in early down success rate against the pass, bottom 5 overall. So if you're going to get them, they should be throwing on early downs, whereas the Chargers should be running. Dallas is dead last in success rate on early down. So I think it's going to be an interesting chess match to see kind of who decides to do the opposite of where they should be going. But I would kind of lean Dallas's way if I had to, but I would not put any money on either side. All right, fine. You want to know the first touchdown? Anyone who follows me knows that I only do long shots. Okay, so if you're coming here for if you want me to say Austin Eckler or Tony Pollard, you're not going to get that here. I only do extreme long shots, and so I have to do a real big long shot. So I'm going to go with a guy named Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan. He's a rookie. He's a tight end for the Cowboys. It's the number 2 tight end for Dallas. And so he was elevated a couple weeks ago. Peyton Hendershot, who was the original number 2, he just got put on IR. So the last 2 games, Shoemaker has increased his snaps up to he's getting about 40 to 50% of the snaps on offense. He got 2 red zone targets the 2 games ago. The last game, there were no red zone opportunities for Dallas, so they didn't even have an opportunity there. But 2 weeks ago against New England, he had 2 targets, and I watched them. One was he just dropped. It should have been a touchdown. The other one, he got tipped at the goal line. And Dak has thrown 15 times out of his 35 red zone targets to tight ends. So he really does like, we know last year with Dalton Schultz, he was like, and Shoemaker, I figured I'd go with the guy who at least has proven to get some targets in the red zone. He's increased his target share, and it's a much higher number. So, and the Chargers have allowed the 3rd highest targets to tight ends in the red zone as well. So their linebackers stink in coverage, and that's an area that I think Dallas could take advantage. So we'll see what happens, and I'll match George's $200 if that hits. Somebody in the comments, I'll send out $200 if that hits a 45 to 1. I have no problems doing that. So
There we go.
I'll follow George here, and then for the 200 you're not going to get when the Dolphins get smashed by Philly, I'll give you 200 for when this first touchdown hits.
All right. That's it, chat. You get a $200 free roll on Shoemaker. You have to comment though. You're not getting just for watching. You got to comment so we know you're in here and like it. We could tell who liked it as well. And if the Eagles beat the Dolphins, I'm going to give the chat $200 because that's how confident I am that I'm still going to have my $200 and the Dolphins will be 6-1 next week. Guys, thanks for doing this, man. I had a blast. We'll be back again tomorrow at 2:00 with myself and Sharp Clark to break down some film, recap the Monday Nighter, and give you the first Thursday night preview. You won't want to miss it. Please subscribe, like, hit the notifications bell. It boosts us in the algorithm. That's it for me. Thanks to Suma. Thanks to Cleve TA. Thanks to producer Jason. And thanks to you, the audience. Until next time.